The text arrived 3:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I didn't answer it right away. I just stared at the screen while the noise of the coffee shop blurred into the background. Espresso machines hissed. Cups clinked. Someone laughed too loudly near the counter. Life continued as if nothing significant had happened. But something had. Family meeting. Don't be late. 8 months. 8 months of silence. No birthday call. No holiday text. No, how are you surviving? Nothing. And now this. Exactly 4 hours earlier, a national business magazine had published a feature valuing my hotel corporation at $94 million. The article described me as disciplined, strategic, quietly formidable. 4 hours. That's how long it took for their silence to expire. They didn't miss me. They recalculated me. I finished my coffee, stood up slowly, and walked outside. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement. The air was warm, but my chest felt hollow. That specific emptiness only family can engineer. The kind that doesn't scream, it just settles. My lucid air waited in the parking lot, polished and silent. I unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and closed the door. The outside world disappeared instantly. And just like that, my mind drifted backward. Graduation day. 6 years of work compressed into one walk across a stage. I remember the lights, blinding, white, hot against my face. I remember my name echoing through the auditorium speakers. I remember the applause. And I remember searching. Not for noise. For faces. The seat reserved for my mother, Cynthia, was empty. The one for my father, Philip, empty. Vanessa, Mason, all empty. 2 hours before the ceremony, my phone had buzzed. Migraine, sweetie. Can't make the drive. We'll celebrate soon. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But later that night, alone in my studio apartment, eating cold takeout straight from the container, I opened Instagram. Mason had posted a story. Yacht life with the fam. Timestamp, that afternoon. 15 seconds, looping over and over. My father holding a cigar, laughing. My mother in oversized sunglasses, sipping champagne. Vanessa posing against the railing, ocean glittering behind them. They were celebrating. Just not me. I didn't cry. I calculated. Emotional risk assessment. Future dependency elimination. I blocked them from viewing my stories that night, not out of anger. Out of clarity. That was the day I stopped expecting love from people who only valued outcomes. Now, 8 months later, my phone sat on the passenger seat glowing with Philip's command. Family meeting. Not are you okay? Not we're proud of you. A meeting. Business language. I started the car. The engine hummed quietly to life, smooth and controlled. I pulled onto the highway and drove south toward the coast. The city skyline slowly dissolved into rolling hills and vineyards. The roads narrowed. The air shifted. Then the estate appeared at the end of the winding driveway. My great-grandfather had built it. Once it symbolized power, influence, legacy. Now it looked tired. The vines were overgrown, twisting aggressively around wooden trellises. The fountain near the entrance was dry and cracked, paint peeled in long, gray strips from the mansion's facade. It wasn't decay from age. It was neglect. I parked beside my father's aging luxury sedan. Oil stained the concrete beneath it, chrome dulled, tires slightly worn. The contrast between our cars was almost cruel. New money versus inherited illusion. I picked up my leather portfolio from the passenger seat. Inside were documents I had spent weeks preparing. Not revenge documents. Strategy documents. I stepped out of the car and inhaled deeply. The air smelled like damp soil and something faintly sour. I walked up the stone steps and entered without knocking. The interior felt heavy, ornate furniture, thick drapes blocking natural light, the faint scent of stale perfume lingering in the air. Brianna. My mother appeared from the drawing room wearing a silk dress I recognized from a gala 3 years ago. Her smile was bright, controlled, calculated. "Look at you," she gushed, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a performance than affection. "We saw the article, 94 million. That's impressive. Very impressive for a starter venture." Starter venture? "It's not a venture," I replied calmly. "It's a corporation." Her smile tightened slightly. Of course. Your father is waiting. Everyone's here." Everyone. We moved into the dining room. The long mahogany table was set for 6, fine china, crystal glasses, silver polished to perfection. The food, however, looked sparse. Dry roasted chicken, thin vegetables, small portions attempting to disguise financial strain. Philip sat at the head of the table like a king clinging to ceremony. His suit was expensive, but the elbows were slightly worn. Beside him sat Vanessa scrolling her phone. Mason leaned back casually in his chair. Uncle Jeremiah poured wine with forced steadiness. "There she is," Philip said without standing. "Sit down, we have business to discuss." Business? I took the seat to his right, but didn't unfold the napkin. For a moment, no one spoke. Cutlery clinked lightly. The performance of normalcy began. Then Philip cleared his throat. "The family estate is facing a temporary liquidity situation," he said, slicing into his chicken. "Expansion of the golf course and spa has been delayed due to regulatory complications." Regulatory complications. He didn't look at me yet. He was building to it. "Given your recent success, we believe it's time you reintegrate into the family structure. We're offering you an opportunity to invest. Junior partnership. Buy-in of 1.6 million. There it was. Not reconciliation. Acquisition. I looked around the table. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. Mason smirked faintly. My mother beamed as if this was generosity. 1.6 million is very specific, I said slowly. It's what the expansion requires, Philip answered smoothly. I placed my hands gently on my portfolio. And for the first time that evening, I allowed myself to smile. Not warmly. Strategically. I didn't reach for a checkbook. I didn't argue. I simply opened my portfolio. The leather creaked softly as I unfastened it, and that small sound seemed louder than the clinking cutlery around the table. Philip noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly. He had expected hesitation, maybe negotiation, maybe gratitude. He had not expected preparation. "You mentioned regulatory complications," I said evenly, sliding the first document across the table. "That's not entirely accurate." The paper stopped in front of him. He didn't touch it. "According to county filings," I continued, "the expansion stalled because 3 contractors placed liens on the property after 6 months of non-payment." Vanessa's phone slowly lowered. Mason shifted in his chair. Philip's jaw tightened. "Where did you get that?" "Public records," I replied. "They're surprisingly accessible when you know how to read them." I slid another document forward. "And this is a notice of intent to foreclose. 8 million in outstanding debt. Variable interest rate. Balloon payment due in 63 days. The room changed temperature. Cynthia laughed too quickly. "That's absurd. Philip, tell her that's absurd." Philip still hadn't touched the papers. His authority relied on silence, on intimidation, on the assumption that no one would challenge him with specifics. But numbers don't flinch. "Family finances are complex," he said finally, voice sharp. "You wouldn't understand the nuances." "I understand leverage," I answered quietly. Jeremiah cleared his throat. "Now, Brianna, there's no need to escalate." "Escalate?" I looked at him. "I haven't escalated, I've clarified." I turned toward Mason. "Your trust fund," I said calmly. "You should review its current balance." Mason blinked. "What?" "It was used as collateral 3 years ago. It's effectively empty." His smirk vanished. "That's not true," Cynthia snapped. I slid one final sheet toward Mason. It's filed under estate restructuring. Signature authorization by Philip Hale. Mason looked at his father. For the first time, uncertainty entered the room. Philip slammed his hand on the table. This is private family business. You made it my business, I said, my voice still level, when you asked me for $1.6 million. Silence pressed against the walls. The illusion was cracking. And Philip could feel it. You think because you've made a little money you can walk in here and interrogate me, he growled. A little money, Vanessa muttered under her breath, eyes flicking toward me with something new. Not admiration. Calculation. Philip leaned back in his chair, attempting composure. Fine, he said coolly. Yes, we've had temporary setbacks. That's precisely why this is an opportunity for you. You invest, you earn equity in legacy assets. Land, heritage, this estate. He gestured broadly around the room. You rejoin the family. There it was again. Conditional belonging. I folded my hands neatly on the table. I have no interest in buying my way into something that's already underwater, I said. Cynthia inhaled sharply. Underwater. Philip's composure fractured. This estate has stood for 4 generations, he said through clenched teeth. It will stand for 4 more. Not without liquidity, I replied. Jeremiah attempted a diplomatic smile. Perhaps we could structure a convertible arrangement. Convertible into what? I asked. Additional debt. Philip stood abruptly. You are being disrespectful. No, I said softly. I'm being accurate. The weight of that word hung in the air. Accurate. For years, this room had functioned on hierarchy, not data. On intimidation, not transparency. But hierarchy dissolves under numbers. Philip leaned forward, palms pressed against the table. You will invest, he said, voice low and threatening, because this family made you. The words landed heavily. Made me. I looked around the table slowly. My tuition, I asked quietly. Scholarships. My startup capital, I continued. 2 part-time jobs and a bank loan you told me not to take. My first hotel, I added. A condemned property no one else wanted. I held his gaze. You didn't make me, I said. You ignored me. The silence that followed was not tense. It was exposed. Cynthia's lips trembled slightly. Vanessa looked between us like she was watching a chess match she hadn't realized was happening. Mason looked confused, betrayed. Philip's breathing grew heavier. You think you're powerful now, he said. But 94 million is paper valuation. Markets shift. Investors pull out. You could lose everything. He was trying to shrink me back into dependence. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Clarity. I diversify, I said calmly. Risk doesn't frighten me, delusion does. His eyes flashed. You ungrateful. The doorbell rang. Sharp. Unexpected. Everyone froze. Philip's head snapped toward the hallway. Were you expecting someone? Vanessa whispered. Philip didn't answer. He walked stiffly toward the door. I remained seated. Steady. Because I knew exactly who was standing on the other side. I didn't move from my seat. I didn't need to. I had timed it precisely. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. The front door opened. A low murmur of voices drifted into the dining room. Then Philip reappeared. His expression had shifted from anger to confusion. Behind him stood a man in a tailored charcoal suit, posture straight, movements controlled. He carried a slim leather briefcase and wore the kind of calm that only comes from knowing you're holding leverage. Good evening, the man said politely. Miss Brianna. I stood. Right on time, Daniel, I replied. Philip's eyes snapped toward me. What is this? Daniel stepped fully into the dining room. Apologies for the interruption. I represent Crestline Capital and Harbor Acquisition Group. Jeremiah stiffened at the names. Investment firms. Real ones. Why are you here? Philip demanded. Daniel calmly placed the briefcase on the sideboard and opened it. Inside were neatly organized folders. I'm here to finalize notification regarding the marina property acquisition, he said. The room went silent. Philip's face drained of color. The marina, he repeated slowly. I walked toward the table and gently turned one of the folders so Philip could read the heading. Marina Cove, deed transfer confirmation. You needed the adjacent marina property for your expansion, I said evenly. Water rights, access road, dock clearance for luxury boating permits. Philip stared at the paper, as if it might rearrange itself into something less devastating. The owner refused to sell, he muttered. To you, I corrected. Daniel slid another document forward. The transfer was executed this morning under Hale Hospitality Holdings. All permits have been conditionally approved pending development submission. Cynthia looked at me, blinking rapidly. You bought it. Yes. The single word landed heavily. You can't be serious, Philip said. I am always serious, I replied. Jeremiah grabbed the document with shaking fingers, scanning quickly. The water rights the easement, the access corridor. All included, Daniel confirmed smoothly. Philip's breathing grew uneven. You did this to help the family, Cynthia asked weakly. I looked at her for a long moment. No. Silence expanded like pressure in a sealed room. I did this because it is the most strategically valuable parcel on this coastline, I continued. It connects directly to tourism traffic, marina docking revenue, and hospitality expansion zoning. Philip's voice cracked. Without that land, the golf course expansion. Cannot proceed, I finished. Jeremiah dropped back into his chair. And without expansion, I continued calmly. Your projected refinancing fails, which triggers the foreclosure clause tied to your current loan. Philip turned toward Jeremiah. Is that accurate? Jeremiah didn't answer immediately. That hesitation was answer enough. Cynthia gripped the edge of the table. You're destroying us. No, I said softly. I'm declining to rescue you. Philip stepped toward me, rage radiating off him. You will transfer those rights back to this family, he said through clenched teeth. I am your father. Daniel spoke before I could. The acquisition contract includes a non-transfer clause for 24 months, he said evenly. Additionally, a competitive restriction radius has been filed, preventing similar hospitality development within 5 miles of Marina Cove. Jeremiah's face went white. You blocked us, he whispered. Yes, I said. Philip stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You planned this. For weeks, I answered. You came here knowing. I came here knowing you would ask for money, I said. You don't break 8 months of silence without a balance sheet. Mason looked between us, shaken. Dad, is the foreclosure real? Philip didn't respond. Vanessa slowly put her phone down, eyes fixed on me with something that resembled respect or fear. You think you've won, Philip said finally, voice hoarse. This isn't about winning, I replied. It's about structure. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You taught me that family is transactional. That value determines attention. That presence is earned. I held his gaze. So I became valuable. Daniel closed his briefcase gently. Groundbreaking for Marina Cove Resort is scheduled in 6 weeks, he said. Construction teams are already contracted. Philip staggered back into his chair. Your building, right next to us, Cynthia whispered. Yes. And when the estate fails, she asked. I didn't blink. Then the bank will auction it. The words hung there. Final. Cold. Jeremiah swallowed hard. And if it goes to auction? I met his eyes. I may consider expanding my vineyard holdings. The implication landed with devastating clarity. Philip's knuckles turned white as he gripped the table. You would buy your own family home. If the numbers make sense, I replied calmly. The power in the room had fully inverted now. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just absolute. Daniel nodded to me. Everything is in motion. Thank you, I said. He exited quietly, leaving only the echo of inevitability behind. The dining room felt smaller now, air heavier. Philip looked at me not as a daughter, but as a threat. You plan to watch us fall, he whispered. No, I corrected gently. I plan to stop falling with you. I picked up my portfolio. You had one responsibility, I said. Show up. Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. Philip opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Because for the first time in his life, he had no leverage. Philip's silence did not last long. Men like him never sit quietly inside defeat. You think you've cornered me, he said finally, voice low and trembling with restrained fury. But you don't understand how this works. I didn't interrupt. When the bank forecloses, he continued, it won't go quietly to auction. There are negotiations, extensions, influence. Influence. The word sounded outdated in that room. Jeremiah avoided eye contact. I tilted my head slightly. You already requested an extension 2 months ago. Philip froze. Cynthia looked at him. You said that was routine paperwork. It was, he snapped. It was denied, I corrected calmly. Your debt-to-income ratio disqualified the restructure. Mason slowly pushed his chair back. So what happens now? Jeremiah inhaled deeply, clearly calculating whether honesty would cost him more than loyalty. If the expansion doesn't proceed, he said carefully, the projected revenue used to secure refinancing collapses. The bank can accelerate the loan. How long? Vanessa asked quietly. 60 days, I answered for him. The number felt heavy in the air. 60 days. Philip's jaw tightened. This is temporary. No, I said, this is structural. I walked slowly toward the window overlooking the vineyard. The vines were wild, tangled, neglected. Do you know why my hotels succeed? I asked without turning around. No one responded. Because I operate on discipline, data, controlled growth. I don't expand when I can't sustain it. I don't borrow against assets I can't protect. I turned back toward them. You expanded to maintain an image. Cynthia flinched. Philip stood again, desperation creeping into his posture. What do you want? The question landed differently this time. Not as a command. As a negotiation. I studied him carefully. I don't want your estate, I said. I don't want your legacy. I don't want your name attached to anything I build. Then why are you here? He demanded. Closure, I replied. The word seemed to confuse him. For 8 months you believed silence was punishment, I continued. You believed I would return smaller, grateful, desperate. Cynthia's eyes lowered. You thought 94 million meant I was finally worthy of acknowledgement. Philip didn't deny it. And tonight, I said evenly, you attempted to sell me entry back into this family. I let the weight of that truth settle. I'm not here to destroy you, I said. I'm here to detach from you. Jeremiah looked up sharply. What does that mean? He asked. It means, I said calmly, that when the estate enters foreclosure, I will not intervene. I will not rescue. I will not negotiate. If it goes to auction, I may bid, strictly as an investor. Philip's breathing grew shallow. You would reduce your own family home to a transaction. You did that first, I answered. Silence. Then something unexpected happened. Mason spoke. Dad, he said slowly, is there actually a way out? Philip hesitated. That hesitation was louder than anything else that night. There are possibilities, he muttered. There aren't, Jeremiah said quietly. All heads turned toward him. Jeremiah removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The marina acquisition closed the only viable expansion path. Without expansion, refinancing collapses. Without refinancing, foreclosure is almost guaranteed. Philip looked betrayed. You were supposed to manage this, he hissed. I advised against over-leveraging 3 years ago, Jeremiah replied softly. The room fractured further. Vanessa stood abruptly. So what? We just lose everything. No one answered. I stepped back toward the table. You won't lose everything, I said calmly. They looked at me. You'll lose excess, I clarified. You'll lose the illusion of permanence. You'll lose the narrative that heritage guarantees survival. Philip glared at me with something close to hatred. You engineered this. No, I said firmly. You engineered this. I just refused to be collateral. The truth hit harder than any accusation. Cynthia's shoulders slumped. Philip sank slowly into his chair. For the first time in my life, he looked small. Not because I raised my voice. Not because I insulted him. Because the structure that held his authority had collapsed. And I hadn't even touched him. I closed my portfolio. I won't be attending any further family meetings, I said quietly. If legal notices need to be delivered regarding property adjacency, send them to my corporate office. You're walking away, Cynthia whispered. I walked away 8 months ago, I replied. I moved toward the door. Behind me, no one tried to stop me. Because for the first time, they understood they had nothing to bargain with. I stepped outside into the cool night air. The estate lights flickered faintly behind me. As I reached my car, my phone vibrated. A news alert. Marina Cove acquisition confirmed. Hale Hospitality expands coastal portfolio. I stared at the headline for a moment. Then I got into my car and started the engine. The mansion shrank in my rearview mirror as I drove down the long gravel driveway. 60 days. That's how long illusions last when leverage disappears. And this time, I wasn't waiting to be invited back in. 60 days passed faster than any of them expected. But I didn't call. I didn't check in. I didn't drive back down that winding gravel driveway. Instead, I built. Marina Cove became a construction symphony. Excavators carved precision lines into coastal earth. Steel frameworks rose against the sky. Investors toured the site wearing hard hats with my company logo embossed in silver. Architectural renderings turned into glass walls and ocean-facing balconies. Every decision was deliberate. Every contract airtight. Every clause reviewed twice. While they scrambled to salvage what was left of legacy, I was laying foundations for permanence. 32 days in, the first public notice appeared. Estate refinancing, efforts collapse amid debt pressure. Local papers picked it up quietly at first, then larger outlets began connecting dots. Adjacent marina acquisition complicates expansion. Analysts speculated, commentators debated. Philip called once. I let it ring. He didn't leave a voicemail. 48 days in, foreclosure proceedings officially advanced. Jeremiah resigned as estate advisor. Vanessa posted fewer photos. Mason stopped posting altogether. And then, on day 60, the notice was final. Public auction scheduled. I read the email notification from the county clerk in my glass-walled office overlooking the harbor. Calm, precise, predictable. My executive team waited across the conference table. Are we proceeding? My CFO asked carefully. Yes, I said. Not emotionally. Strategically. Auction day arrived with gray skis and quiet tension. The estate looked even more tired than I remembered. The vines had not been trimmed. The fountain remained dry. Curtains inside hung unevenly. A small crowd gathered. Developers, investors, curious locals. And Philip. He stood near the steps, suit pressed but eyes hollow. Cynthia beside him, composed but visibly thinner. Vanessa distant. Mason quiet. When he saw me step out of my car, something unreadable crossed his face. Not anger. Not pride. Recognition. The auction began. Bids moved quickly at first. Developers circled like vultures, assessing land value, structural salvage, redevelopment potential. The number climbed, then slowed, then stalled. The estate's debts made it less attractive than it appeared. The auctioneer called for higher bids. Silence. I raised my paddle. The sound of the number leaving my mouth felt steady. Clean. Another developer countered. I countered again. The air tightened. Philip watched without blinking. Final call. No further bids. The gavel struck wood. Sold. To Hale Hospitality Holdings. The name echoed across the front lawn. For a moment, no one moved. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't celebrating. I was closing a cycle. Philip walked toward me slowly. You bought it, he said quietly. Yes. For revenge. No, I answered. For redevelopment. He looked at the mansion behind him. You're erasing us. I'm restructuring assets, I replied calmly. Cynthia stepped forward. What happens to us? There was no cruelty in her voice now. Only fear. You'll receive the legally mandated relocation window, I said evenly. 90 days. I've already instructed my legal team to provide transition support. Philip stared at me. You're giving us support. I'm not you, I said. The words weren't sharp. They were final. He let out a slow breath. You always were different, he murmured. No, I replied. I was just watching. Watching how leverage works. Watching how silence wounds. Watching how value shifts when structure collapses. Over the next several weeks, demolition crews carefully removed unstable sections of the estate. The land was surveyed, replanned, reimagined. The mansion wasn't destroyed. It was redesigned. The main structure became a private vineyard retreat under my hospitality brand. The marina connected seamlessly to the new coastal resort. The land finally generated sustainable revenue instead of symbolic pride. Press coverage followed. From estranged daughter to strategic mogul. But the headlines missed the point. This was never about drama. It was about discipline. Months later, at the official unveiling of Marina Cove Resort and Vineyard Retreat, investors applauded as I stepped to the podium. Ocean behind me. Glass architecture reflecting sunlight. A rebuilt future standing where mismanagement once rotted. I spoke briefly. About structure. About resilience. About building what you can sustain. In the crowd, I noticed familiar faces at the edge of the event perimeter. Philip. Cynthia. Not inside the VIP section. Not at the table. Just observers. For the first time, there was no tension between us. No demand. No leverage. Only distance. And clarity. That night, standing alone on the balcony overlooking the water, I thought about justice. People think justice is punishment. Sometimes it's repositioning. Sometimes it's acquiring the very ground someone once stood on and turning it into something stronger. They believed silence would shrink me. They believed money would summon me. They believed legacy would control me. They were wrong. I didn't inherit power. I structured it. And if this story reminded you that your worth is never something you beg to be recognized, press like, share where you're listening from, and subscribe for more stories about building power that no one can revoke.